From banning Bollywood to mocking Indian traditions, these 15 countries are not just ignoring Indian culture, they're actively pushing it away. Curious to know who tops the list? Stick around till the end, because number 1 will truly shock you. Welcome back to the channel where we explore global truths no one talks about. In today's video, we're diving into the top 15 countries that hate Indian culture in 2025. Whether it's politics, religion, or just cultural disconnect, these nations have shown open resistance or quiet rejection toward Indian traditions, festivals, films, and more. Let's uncover the reasons why. 15. Egypt. Though India and Egypt share diplomatic ties, the general public and cultural institutions show minimal interest or appreciation for Indian culture. Bollywood has a small niche audience, but Indian traditions like yoga, vegetarianism, and colorful religious festivals are often seen as strange or incompatible with Arab norms. Indian expats face cultural isolation, and Indian attire, food, and customs are not widely embraced. There is growing cultural nationalism in Egypt, and foreign cultural influences, especially from the East, are viewed with suspicion. While not openly hostile, there's a clear lack of cultural warmth toward Indian practices. 14. Morocco. Morocco has limited exposure to Indian culture, and what little exists is often stereotyped or misunderstood. Indian religious symbols and spiritual practices are unfamiliar and rarely welcomed in public spaces. Indian movies, music, and literature have almost no footprint here, and traditional Indian dress or cuisine is considered exotic rather than respected. Socially, South Asians in Morocco report being treated as inferior, and there's a cultural preference for Western or Arab norms. Indian culture isn't actively hated, but it's often dismissed or looked down upon due to cultural disconnect and lack of mutual exchange. 13. Lebanon. Lebanon, despite being more liberal than its neighbors, doesn't welcome Indian culture openly. There's limited representation of Indian media, and cultural practices such as Hindu rituals, religious attire, or vegetarianism are rarely accepted. The society leans toward French and Arab cultural influences, and Indian traditions are seen as distant and irrelevant. Some Indian workers report discrimination, and Indian values like arranged marriage or caste-based issues are often mocked. Though not officially against India, there's a cultural gap that leads to marginalization and subtle disdain for Indian customs. 12. Syria. Due to war and instability, Syria has become extremely closed off to outside influences, including Indian culture. Indian movies or products are nearly non-existent, and cultural tolerance is low. The society has become more conservative, and there's little space for foreign cultural expressions. Indian expats or aid workers who've worked here report being treated with suspicion. Religious festivals like Diwali or Holi are not allowed, and yoga or meditation are considered Western-imported distractions rather than Indian heritage. Cultural acceptance is minimal, making India's soft power almost invisible in Syria. 11. Yemen. In Yemen, the combination of war, ultra-conservative views, and local nationalism has created an atmosphere hostile to foreign culture, including Indian. Indian traditions, religious beliefs, and clothing are perceived as alien, and there's virtually no representation of Indian culture in public life. Even Indian food and language face social resistance. The conflict-torn country has also seen cases where Indian workers are mistreated or culturally isolated. Celebrations like Holi or Diwali are impossible to hold publicly, and Bollywood is entirely absent from TV and cinemas. There's deep cultural isolation and zero promotion of Indian heritage. 10. Qatar. Qatar has a large Indian population, but cultural respect is not equal. Indian festivals are restricted to private gatherings, and Hindu practices cannot be performed publicly. There's a clear divide between Qatari nationals and South Asian workers, many of whom face discrimination. Indian attire, language, and food are accepted only in certain areas, and public promotion of Indian customs is discouraged. Despite economic ties, the elite culture in Qatar tends to look down upon Indian traditions, favoring Arab and Western influence. Indian culture is tolerated, but not celebrated. 9. Algeria. In Algeria, Arab nationalism dominates, and foreign cultures are not easily welcomed. Indian customs, such as colorful religious festivals, vegetarianism, or traditional dress, are viewed as strange or inferior. Bollywood films are barely available, and Indian expats have a hard time integrating culturally. Algerians often stereotype Indian people based on class or appearance, and Hinduism is misunderstood. There's a cultural superiority complex that sees Indian traditions as undeveloped or outdated. The general attitude is passive-aggressive, not openly hostile, but clearly resistant to embracing anything Indian. 8. Iran. Iran values its ancient Persian identity and sees Indian culture as foreign and incompatible. Indian movies and religious practices are not promoted, and cultural representation is minimal. Hindu or Sikh customs are misunderstood or considered un-Islamic. Indian attire and vegetarian food are often mocked, and yoga or meditation is seen as westernized trends rather than Indian roots. Political differences have also contributed to Iran's cold stance toward India's cultural influence. Many Iranians do not resonate with Indian values, and cultural diplomacy between the two countries remains weak. 7. Turkey. Turkey has increasingly leaned toward cultural and religious nationalism under its current leadership. Indian culture is not part of the mainstream, and Indian movies, languages, and religious traditions are not commonly accepted. Due to Turkey's close ties with Pakistan, there is also a political angle, supporting Pakistan in the Kashmir conflict and subtly downplaying Indian perspectives. Indian traditions like Holi, Diwali, or vegetarianism are rare and viewed as unusual. There is a strong preference for Turkish, Arab, or Western culture, and Indian heritage is sidelined. 6. Kuwait. Despite having a significant Indian workforce, Kuwaiti society offers little cultural respect in return. Indian festivals, religious attire, and vegetarian diets are tolerated at best, but rarely welcomed in public. Indians face social discrimination and are often treated as low-status workers regardless of qualification. Bollywood and Indian music have some reach among youth, but the overall perception of Indian culture remains dismissive. Deep-rooted classism and religious conservatism drive this hostility, making Indian cultural expression in Kuwait highly restricted. 5. Afghanistan. Since the Taliban regained control, Indian culture has been completely erased from Afghan public life. All Indian films, books, and religious practices are banned. Yoga, meditation, and other spiritual elements of Indian culture are labeled anti-Islamic. The Taliban see India as an enemy state and Hinduism as heresy. Indian embassies and consulates were targeted and shut down. Any signs of Indian influence are either destroyed or suppressed. Cultural hatred is deep-rooted and institutionally supported in Taliban-led Afghanistan. 4. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is extremely conservative and does not encourage public practice of Indian culture, especially Hinduism or Sikhism. Festivals like Diwali or Holi are banned publicly, and religious items like idols or sacred books are not allowed. Though many Indians live and work in Saudi Arabia, they are often segregated and face cultural restrictions. Indian attire is discouraged in formal settings, and vegetarianism is not understood or accepted widely. Bollywood is censored, and Indian culture is not respected equally in society despite its presence. 3. China. India's strategic rival, China shows cultural resistance through censorship and isolation. Bollywood films are banned or heavily edited. Yoga and Indian literature are filtered to remove religious or national symbols. There's almost no space in Chinese media for Indian voices or traditions. The ongoing border tensions also fuel negative public sentiment. Indian students, workers, and tourists report being treated coldly or with suspicion. The government's suppression of Indian cultural exports contributes to growing cultural disconnect. 2. North Korea. North Korea is culturally closed and rejects all foreign influence. Indian movies, books, food, and traditions are completely banned. Citizens have zero access to Indian content. Religion itself is forbidden, so Hinduism, Sikhism, and other Indian practices are treated as threats to the regime. The state-run media never covers India, and any cultural connection is blocked. There is no room for Indian culture. North Korea enforces cultural purity with authoritarian force. 1. Pakistan. Pakistan ranks number 1 due to decades of ideological, religious, and political conflict with India. Indian culture is seen as a threat. Bollywood is banned, Hindu festivals are shunned, and Indian textbooks and media are blocked. India is portrayed negatively in schools, politics, and public discourse. There's a deep-rooted antagonism that extends beyond politics into everyday cultural life. Indian traditions are mocked or vilified, and public display of Indian customs is often met with backlash. Pakistan leads globally in organized rejection of Indian culture.